Iron is an important mineral and it has several functions in the body. The body needs iron to produce red blood cells. Primarily, iron is the oxygen carrier of the protein hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the protein in red blood cells responsible for carrying oxygen to the tissues from the lungs. Iron is required for energy production and the enzymatic synthesis of RNA and DNA. Iron also helps to preserve many vital functions in the body, including general energy and focus, gastrointestinal processes, the immune system, and the regulation of body temperature. The benefits of iron often go unnoticed until a person is not getting enough. Iron deficiency is the #1 nutritional deficiency in the world. Dietary sources of iron include red meat, poultry, leafy green vegetables, prunes, raisins, egg yolks, lentils, oysters, clams, artichokes, and enriched cereal grains. In this chapter, we will discuss the importance of blood and its vital role in support of metabolism and pull together what we've learned about macronutrient metabolism. Blood is the connective tissue of the circulatory system, transporting absorbed nutrients to cells and waste products from cells. Additionally, blood transports molecules such as hormones, allowing for communication between organs. The volume of blood coursing through an adult human body is about 5 liters or 1.3 gallons and accounts for about 8% of human body weight. The liquid part of blood is called plasma and is mostly water, about 95% water, but it also contains proteins, ions, glucose, lipids, vitamins, minerals, waste products, gases, enzymes, and hormones. The protein albumin is found in high concentrations in the blood and it maintains fluid balance between the blood and the tissues, as well as helping to maintain a constant blood pH. Furthermore, the high water content of blood helps maintain body temperature, and the constant flow of blood distributes heat throughout the body. The cellular components of blood include the blood cells and the platelets. Red blood cells contain about 270 million hemoglobin proteins, which contain the mineral iron. White blood cells circulate in the blood and they're part of the immune system. They survey the entire body looking for foreign invaders to destroy. Platelets are fragments of cells and they're always circulating in the blood and they function to stop blood loss from a damaged vessel. Nutrients and molecules get into all cells through the blood. Blood vessels carry the nutrients into the cells. In addition to transporting all of these molecules, blood also has to transfer the oxygen breathed in by the lungs to all the cells in the body. When the body metabolizes foods to make energy, cells produce the waste products, carbon dioxide and water, which are transported in the blood. The kidneys will remove any excess water in the blood, and the blood delivers the carbon dioxide to the lungs where it is exhaled. Blood is healthy when it contains the appropriate amount of water and cellular components and proper concentrations of dissolved substances such as albumin and electrolytes. Blood cells are made in the bone marrow. Amino acids are required to build the massive amount of hemoglobin that's packed within every single red blood cell, along with all other enzymes and cellular organelles contained in each blood cell. Red blood cells, similar to the brain, only use glucose as fuel, so glucose must be in constant supply to support red blood cell metabolism. Since the blood is the conduit of metabolic products and waste, measuring the components of the blood and certain substances in the blood can reveal not only the health of the blood, but also the health of the other organ systems. A biomarker is defined as a measurable molecule or trait that's connected with a specific disease or health condition. They're also indicative of disease risk and include cholesterol, triglycerides, glucose, prostate-specific antigen or PSA, plus many others. Many factors, such as physical activity, diet, alcohol, and medicine intake, can influence a person's blood test levels and cause them to fall outside the normal range. The next two slides contain just a few of the biomarkers measured in common blood labs. Metabolism is the sum of all the chemical reactions required to support the function of the cells and therefore to support life. It has two components, catabolism and anabolism. Catabolism is the breaking down of organic matter, and anabolism is the building up of components of cells such as proteins and nucleic acids. Essentially, metabolism is the set of life-sustaining chemical transformations within the cells of living organisms. The main purposes of metabolism are the conversion of food to energy to run cellular processes, the conversion of food to building blocks for proteins, lipids, nucleic acids, and some carbohydrates, and the elimination of wastes. These reactions allow organisms to grow and reproduce, maintain their structure, and respond to their environments. A metabolic pathway is a series of enzymatic reactions that transforms the starting material, known as a substrate, into intermediates, which are the substrates from the next enzymatic reactions in the pathway, until finally an end product is synthesized by the last enzymatic reaction in the pathway. To ensure cellular efficiency, the metabolic pathways involved in catabolism and anabolism are regulated in concert by energy status, hormones, and the levels of substrate and end products. Cells requiring energy or building blocks take up the nutrients from the blood and process them in either catabolic or anabolic pathways. Recall that metabolism is characterized into metabolic pathways that either break down the molecules that will release energy, that's catabolism, and the molecules that consume energy by building bigger molecules, that's anabolism. Energy metabolism refers more specifically to these specific metabolic pathways that release or store energy. Remember, some of these are catabolic pathways, while others are anabolic pathways, and some of these are listed below on the table. Technically, food isn't the fuel of the body. Fuel is ATP. Glucose is the preferred energy source by most of the tissues of the body, but fatty acids and amino acids can also be broken down to ATP. The breakdown of nutrients to energy can be separated into three stages. Stage 1 is glycolysis, Stage 2 is the Krebs cycle, and Stage 3 is the electron transport change and the synthesis of ATP. The breakdown of molecules in the catabolic pathways releases energy, and this energy powers the anabolic pathways to build macromolecules such as the proteins RNA and DNA, and even entire new cells and tissues. Anabolic pathways are required to build new tissue such as muscle after exercise or the remodeling of bone tissue. Anabolic pathways also build energy storage molecules such as glycogen and triglycerides. Recall that glycogen is the storage form of glucose and triglycerides is a storage form of fat. Anabolic pathways are regulated by their end products, but even more so by the energy state of the cell. When the cells have enough energy, bigger molecules such as protein, RNA, and DNA will be built as needed. But when there's not enough energy in the cell, proteins and other molecules will be destroyed and catabolized to release energy. When the body needs to store glucose, it can only store it in two types of tissue, muscle tissue and liver tissue, and it'll store the glucose in the form of glycogen. It won't take long for glycogen stores to reach their physiological limit. When this happens, any excess glucose will be converted to a fat called triglyceride. This newly made triglyceride will be transported to a fat-storing cell called an adipocyte. Fat's a better alternative to glycogen for energy storage because it's more compact. Carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and even alcohol are broken down to release energy. Vitamins and minerals are not. They play a different kind of role in energy metabolism. They're required as functional parts of enzymes involved in the energy release and storage, but they are not used to make energy. Vitamins and minerals that make up part of an enzyme are referred to as coenzymes in the case of vitamins and cofactors in the case of minerals. These are required by enzymes to catalyze reactions. Many vitamins and minerals are also required for blood renewal and function. In this section, we'll focus on the vitamins that take part in metabolism and blood function and renewal. A coenzyme and a cofactor is the particular vitamin or mineral required for enzymes to catalyze a specific reaction. Next, we'll discuss vitamins that act as cofactors. The first group of vitamins we'll discuss are the B vitamins. Thiamin, or vitamin B1, acts as a cofactor for enzymes that break down glucose for energy production. Thiamin also plays a role in the synthesis of ribose from glucose and is therefore required for RNA, DNA, and ATP production. Beriberi is a severe thiamine deficiency that causes symptoms of fatigue, confusion, impaired movement, pain in the lower legs, swelling, and heart failure. But even a mild thiamine or B1 deficiency can cause symptoms. Riboflavin, or vitamin B2, is an essential component of flavoproteins. These are coenzymes involved in many metabolic pathways of carbs, fats, and protein. Furthermore, the functions of other B vitamin coenzymes, such as vitamin B6 and folate, are dependent on the actions of B2. Riboflavin deficiency, sometimes referred to as arabiflavinosis, is often accompanied by other dietary deficiency, most notably protein, and can be common in people that suffer from alcoholism. Niacin, or vitamin B3, is a component of the coenzymes NADH and NADPH. These are involved in the catabolism and/or anabolism of carbs, fats, and proteins. NADPH is also required for the anabolic pathways of the production of fatty acid and cholesterol. Unlike other vitamins, niacin can be made by the human body from the amino acid tryptophan. A severe niacin deficiency is commonly known as pellagra, and it's often characterized by diarrhea, dermatitis, dementia, and sometimes even death. Pantothenic acid, or vitamin B5, forms coenzyme A. This is the carbon carrier of glucose, fatty acids, and amino acids into the Krebs cycle. It's also involved in the synthesis of lipids, cholesterol, and acetylcholine. Pyroxidine, or vitamin B6, sometimes called P5P, is the coenzyme that's involved in nitrogen transfer between amino acids, so it plays a role in amino acid production and catabolism. It also functions to release glucose from glycogen, and it's required by enzymes for the production of multiple neurotransmitters and hemoglobin. B6 deficiency can cause anemia, as well as signs and symptoms of muscle weakness, dermatitis, mouth sores, fatigue, and confusion. Biotin is required as a coenzyme in the citric acid cycle and in lipid metabolism. It's also required as an enzyme in the synthesis of glucose and some non-essential amino acids. A deficiency in biotin is pretty rare, but it can be caused by eating large amounts of egg whites over an extended period of time because there's a protein in egg whites that will tightly bind to biotin, making it unavailable for absorption. Folate is required for the synthesis of the amino acid methionine and for making RNA and DNA. Folate deficiency results in a type of anemia called macrocytic anemia or big cell anemia. This is characterized by having fewer red blood cells than normal and larger red blood cells than normal. It's especially essential for the growth and specialization of cells of the central nervous system. Children whose mothers were folate deficient during pregnancy have a much higher risk of neural tube birth defects. Cobalamin, or vitamin B12, contains cobalt, making it the only vitamin that contains a metal ion. Vitamin B12 is an essential part of coenzymes. It's necessary for fat and protein breakdown, for folate coenzyme function, and for the production of hemoglobin. Cobalamin deficiency has similar consequences as folate deficiency: macrocytic anemia and an increased risk for neural tube defects in babies born to deficient mothers. The stomach contains cells that secrete a protein called intrinsic factor that's necessary for B12 absorption. Impairment of intrinsic factor secretion can be caused by an autoimmune disease or by chronic inflammation of the stomach. Many things can cause chronic inflammation of the stomach, but one example is a bacterial infection called H. pylori. This can lead to another type of anemia associated with B12 deficiency. Vitamin B12 malabsorption is most common in the elderly who may have impaired functioning of digestive organs, a normal consequence of aging. Although some supplement marketers claim that taking a vitamin containing 1,000 times the daily value of certain B vitamins will boost your energy and performance, this hasn't been backed by science. The feeling of more energy from energy-boosting supplements could stem from the high amount of added sugars, caffeine, or other herbal stimulants that might be in the B vitamin supplement. B vitamins are water-soluble, so they're not stored in the body well, and any excess B12 will be flushed down the toilet. Because B vitamins are water soluble and they're not stored in significant amounts in the body, they must be continuously obtained from the diet. Fortunately, B vitamins are generally well absorbed in the gut. It should be noted, though, that B vitamins are lost from foods during storage, processing, and cooking. To maximize B vitamin uptake, fruits and vegetables should not be stored for long periods of time. They should be eaten more as a whole food, in other words, not a processed food. And vegetables should be steamed rather than boiled, as cooking can destroy some of the vitamin content. Also, alcohol consumption disrupts intestinal absorption of your B vitamins. These next two slides show you specific B vitamins, the recommended daily allowance for each one, and food sources. Although it's not on this slide, there are some plant sources of B12 that vegans and vegetarians might be interested in: nutritional yeast, chlorella, fortified soy and almond milk, certain seaweeds, and certain mushrooms. Vitamin K is also critical for blood functioning, acting as a coenzyme for enzymes involved in blood clotting. There's also emerging evidence that vitamin K may play a role in energy metabolism, but currently the exact functions of vitamin K-dependent enzymes in energy metabolism aren't quite known. A deficiency in vitamin K causes bleeding disorders. It's relatively rare, but people who have liver or pancreatic disease, celiac, or malabsorption conditions are at a higher risk for vitamin K deficiency. Next, we'll discuss minerals that are important for metabolism and for blood function and renewal. Magnesium is known to participate as a cofactor in hundreds of metabolic reactions. It's involved in all reactions that produce or require ATP, including carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, RNA, and DNA synthesis. Many Americans don't get the recommended intake of magnesium from their diets, and some studies have linked deficiency to increased risk for cardiovascular disease. Iron is a key component of the heme portion of hemoglobin. Heme is the oxygen-carrying portion of hemoglobin. Iron is also a key component of hundreds of metabolic enzymes. Iron is involved in numerous metabolic reactions that take place mainly in the liver and detoxify harmful substances. It's also required for DNA synthesis. The vast majority of iron used in the body is that recycled from the continuous breakdown of red blood cells. If iron level is low, hemoglobin is not synthesized in sufficient amounts, and the oxygen-carrying capacity of red blood cells is reduced, resulting in anemia. The bioavailability of iron is highly dependent on dietary sources. In animal-based foods, about 60% of iron is bound to hemoglobin, and heme iron is more bioavailable than non-heme iron. Non-heme iron is the only iron source in plant-based foods. Some plants contain chemicals that inhibit iron absorption, although if you eat fruits and vegetables rich in vitamin C at the same time as iron-containing foods, it will dramatically increase iron absorption. Zinc is a cofactor for over 200 enzymes in the human body. Zinc is also crucial for the synthesis of RNA, DNA, and protein. Zinc is a cofactor for enzymes involved in energy metabolism. In adults, a severe zinc deficiency can cause hair loss, diarrhea, skin sores, loss of appetite, and weight loss. It can stunt growth in infants and children. It's estimated that half the world's population has a zinc-deficient diet. Zinc is a required cofactor for an enzyme that synthesizes the heme portion of hemoglobin, so a severely deficient zinc diet can result in anemia. Iodine is essential for the synthesis of thyroid hormone, which regulates basal metabolism, growth, and development. Having low iodine levels can result in a condition called hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism has many signs and symptoms, including fatigue, sensitivity to cold, constipation, weight gain, depression, and dry, itchy skin and paleness of the skin. An unborn fetus or an infant with severe iodine deficiency can develop a condition known as cretinism, in which physical and neurological impairment can be severe. Like iodine, selenium is important for the thyroid as well. It's a cofactor of enzymes that release the active thyroid hormone into the cells, and therefore low levels can cause similar signs and symptoms as iodine deficiency. The other important function of selenium is that it is an antioxidant. Manganese is a cofactor for enzymes involved in glucose production, or gluconeogenesis, and the breakdown of amino acids in the liver. A deficiency in manganese is uncommon. Copper, like iron, assists in electron transfer in the electron transport chain. Copper is also a cofactor of enzymes that are essential for iron absorption and iron transport. Copper is also an antioxidant. Symptoms of mild to moderate copper deficiency are rare. More severe copper deficiency can cause anemia from the lack of iron mobilization in the body for red blood cell synthesis. The function of chromium in the body is less understood than that of most other minerals. We do know it enhances the actions of insulin, so it plays a role in carbohydrate, fat, and protein metabolism. But currently, the results of scientific studies evaluating the usefulness of chromium supplementation in preventing and treating type 2 diabetes are largely inconclusive. The next 4 tables will highlight each mineral, their function, signs and symptoms of deficiencies, and the recommended daily allowance of each. The body doesn't absorb minerals as well as most vitamins, so the bioavailability of minerals can be very low. Plant-based foods can sometimes contain cofactors that bind to minerals that will inhibit their absorption. In general, minerals are better absorbed from animal-based foods. In most cases, if dietary intake of a particular mineral is increased, absorption will decrease. As is the case with vitamins, certain gastrointestinal disorders and diseases, such as Crohn's disease and kidney disease, as well as the aging process, can impair mineral absorption, putting people with malabsorption conditions and the elderly at higher risk for mineral deficiencies. Iron deficiency anemia is a condition that develops from having insufficient iron levels in the body, resulting in fewer and smaller red blood cells containing lower amounts of hemoglobin. Signs and symptoms of iron deficiency anemia include fatigue, weakness, pale skin, shortness of breath, dizziness, swollen or sore tongue, and an abnormal heart rate. Anemia is most often treated with iron supplements and increasing the consumption of foods that are higher in iron. Eating vitamin C rich foods at the same time as iron-containing foods improves absorption of non-heme iron in the gut. The next few slides will highlight the dietary sources of iron and those foods that either enhance or inhibit iron absorption. As mentioned previously, the CDC reports that iron deficiency is the most common nutritional deficiency worldwide. In addition, the World Health Organization estimates that 80% of people are iron deficient and 30% of the world population has iron deficiency anemia. The main causes of iron deficiency worldwide are parasitic infections. Parasitic infections in the gut causes excessive blood loss. Malaria is the second one, a parasitic disease causing the destruction of red blood cells. In developed countries, iron deficiency is more the result of dietary insufficiency and/or excessive blood loss occurring during menstruation or childbirth. Who's at risk for iron deficiency? Infants, children, adolescents, and women are the populations most at risk worldwide for iron deficiency anemia by all causes. Women who experience heavy menstrual bleeding or who are pregnant require more iron in the diet. Both elderly men and women have a high incidence of anemia, and the most common causes are dietary iron deficiency and chronic diseases such as ulcers, inflammatory diseases, and cancer. Those who have recently suffered from traumatic blood loss, or who frequently donate blood, or take excessive antacids for heartburn need more iron in the diet. There is a potential for iron toxicity. The body excretes very little iron, and therefore the potential for accumulation in the tissues and organs is considerable. Iron accumulation in certain tissues and organs can cause a host of health problems in children and adults, including extreme fatigue, arthritis, joint pain, and severe liver and heart toxicity. In children, death has occurred from ingesting as little as 200 milligrams of iron, and therefore it's critical to keep iron supplements out of children's reach. How do we prevent iron deficiency anemia? In the U.S., we screen infants for iron deficiency anemia, we fortify our cereals and infant formulas with iron, and we distribute them in supplemental food programs, such as that within women, infants, and children. For the first 12 months of a child's life, we encourage breastfeeding, supplementing with iron, and delaying the introduction of cow's milk. We encourage providing a diet rich in sources of iron and vitamin C, limiting cow's milk consumption to less than 24 ounces a day, and we limit multivitamins containing iron. In the third world, iron deficiency anemia remains a significant public health challenge. The World Bank states 5 key interventions to combat anemia. Provide at-risk groups with iron supplements, fortify staple foods with iron and other micronutrients whose deficiencies are linked with anemia, prevent the spread of malaria and treat the hundreds of millions with the disease, provide insecticide-treated bed netting to prevent parasitic infections, and treat parasitic worm infestations at high-risk populations. Also, there's ongoing investigations as to whether supplying iron cookware to at-risk populations is effective in preventing and treating iron deficiency anemia.